Story 1. The first time anyone saw the man on the roof, it was just after sunset, when the sky was the kind of bruised purple that made the neighborhood feel like it was holding its breath. And maybe it was. Maybe we all were. Because nobody expected to look up at the old Halden house and see someone perched on its sagging roof tiles like a bird ready to dive. His silhouette was unmistakable. Tall, thin, motionless. He sat with his knees pulled up, his long arms resting loosely on them, his head tilted downward toward the street. Toward us. Like he was studying each resident individually, memorizing every face. We thought it was a prank. Or a lost hiker. Or some teenager climbing for a dare. But we were wrong. The man on the roof wasn't lost. He wasn't a prank. He wasn't human in the way we understood the word. And by the time we realized what he was, 3 people in our town were already dead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the night we first noticed him, and the moment that marked the end of our normal lives. The Halden house. The Halden house had stood at the top of Bramble Hill for almost 90 years, but everyone in town treated it the same way they treated the cemetery down by Willow Creek, a place full of history, best ignored. It wasn't haunted, at least not in the way ghost hunters on TV would describe. It was just wrong. Uneasy. The kind of place people instinctively crossed the street to avoid walking past. I grew up hearing the stories. How the original owner, Edgar Halden, built the house for his wife and unborn son, but neither survived the winter. How Halden became a recluse, seen only in the attic windows. How he died in the house alone, his body found weeks later. Kids said if you looked into the attic windows after dark, sometimes you saw Halden staring back. Adults said the house was simply falling apart. The truth? No one went near it. Not until the man on the roof appeared. And after that, no one could stay away. The viewer. My name is Noah Caldwell. I was 16 the year it happened. Old enough to think I knew everything. Young enough to believe nothing truly bad could happen in a quiet town like Brookbend. That night, I was biking home from my part-time job at the gas station, one earbud in, humming along to a playlist I'd heard 100 times. The streetlights buzzed overhead. Crickets screamed in the grass. I wasn't even thinking about the Halden house. Nobody ever did. But as I passed the base of Bramble Hill, a prickling sensation slid up my spine. The kind that makes you glance over your shoulder even when you're alone. So I looked up, and there he was. A man sitting on the roof, backlit by the dim glow of the moon. Still as stone. Watching me. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't show any sign that he even breathed. A sharp panic spiked in my chest. My hands tightened around the handlebars. And for a moment that lasted too long, I couldn't move. His head tilted ever so slightly, like he was acknowledging me. Just me. The street was silent. The crickets stopped. The wind died. Even the hum of electricity seemed to fade. I blinked and he was gone. Not climbed down. Not crawled away. Not slipped behind the roof's peak. Just gone. As if he had never been there at all. The others saw him too. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. Turned off the lights. Pulled the blanket over my head. Told myself I had imagined it. But when I finally drifted off, I dreamed of him. Sitting on the roof. Staring at me. Tilting his head too slowly. Asking without words, "Do you remember me?" I woke drenched in sweat. The next morning, the group chat at school was exploding. "Yo, did anyone see the guy on the Halden house last night? Thought I was tripping. I swear he was staring at me. I took a picture but it came out black. Same here, what the hell?" My heart pounded as I scrolled through the messages. It wasn't just me. At least 12 different people saw him. The same time. The same place. The same posture. The man on the roof. He was here before. At lunchtime, I met my best friend Sydney behind the bleachers. She looked pale, her hair pulled into a messy bun, her backpack half open. "You saw him too," she said. "I think so." "You think?" I don't know what I saw." She exhaled shakily and leaned against the metal railing. "My grandma used to tell a story," she whispered, "about a man who sits on roofs to watch people. She called him the viewer. Said he shows up when a town is hiding something." I raised an eyebrow. And your grandma believed that? She believed a lot of things. I snorted. Like that raccoons steal souls? That happened one time and we don't talk about it. Despite everything we laughed. But it faded quickly. Seriously, Noah, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. What if he's real? You think some supernatural creeper decided to hang out on a rotting house for fun? Sydney didn't smile. I think he wanted us to see him. Those words stuck with me. Because that's exactly how it felt. Like the man on the roof hadn't been caught or spotted by accident. He wanted our attention. He wanted witnesses. And for the next few days, the sightings didn't stop. The second time, 2 nights later, the man appeared again. This time, half the neighborhood saw him. Mrs. Langley called the sheriff. Teenagers live-streamed it. Kids cried. Dogs barked nonstop. I forced myself to bike back to Bramble Hill. I don't know why. Curiosity is dangerous that way. When I reached the base of the hill, the crowd had already gathered, maybe 30 people spaced out along the sidewalk, all eyes glued to the roof. And there he was. Same position. Same silhouette. Same unnerving stillness. But this time, something was different. This time, he stood up. The entire crowd gasped. He didn't move like a person. Didn't rise naturally. He unfolded, slow, mechanical, his limbs stretching too far, his spine arching too easily. Then he took one long step toward the edge of the roof. Someone shouted for him to stop. He didn't. He stepped off. But he didn't fall. He descended. Straight down. Vertically. As if gravity didn't apply to him. People screamed. Some ran. Some shouted for the sheriff. Some froze, unable to look away. He reached the ground and vanished. A blink. A flicker. Gone. Leaving only a gust of cold wind sweeping across the hill. And a terrible silence. People panicked. The police ordered everyone back inside. The fire department set up floodlights. Deputies searched the building. They found nothing. But something found us. Because the next morning, Brookbend woke to the news. A man was found dead on his porch. Skin pale. Eyes open. Expression frozen in terror. No wounds. No signs of struggle. Nothing to explain what happened. Except for one thing. His body was twisted ever so slightly. His head tilted. Just like the man on the roof. The town begins to unravel. Fear spread faster than any investigation. Kids stopped walking alone. Adults locked their doors in broad daylight. Teachers whispered in hallways. Parents kept every light in their houses on at night. No one went near Bramble Hill. Except me. And Sydney. Because we needed answers. Who was he? What did he want? Why had he come to Brookbend? And why now? There had to be a connection. Something the town was hiding. Something buried. And Brookbend, for the first time in its quiet little life, was starting to crack. The man returns. The night after the first death, the man appeared again. Not on the roof. He stood in the street. Under a flickering lamppost. Facing the entire neighborhood. And smiling. A horrifically stretched, unnatural smile. As if he had never practiced one before. People watched from behind curtains. Some prayed. Some sobbed. And I, standing beside Sydney, realized something chilling. He was learning. Studying us. Becoming something more familiar. Something more dangerous. Sydney gripped my arm. Noah, she whispered shakily. He's choosing someone. How do you know? Her voice trembled. Because he's looking at you. And when I finally gathered the courage to meet the man's gaze, I realized she was right. He was staring directly at me. As if he recognized me. As if we'd met before. As if he was waiting for me to remember him. And that was the night everything changed. That was the night the killings truly began. That was the night Brookbend forfeited every illusion of safety it ever had. That was the night the man on the roof came down. And never went back up. The morning after the man in the street stared at me, Brookbend woke to a sound we weren't used to hearing. Sirens. In our town, sirens meant one of two things. A farmer cut his hand on equipment again. Old Mr. Danver had fallen asleep at the wheel and taken out another mailbox. But this time, the sirens didn't fade after a few minutes. They multiplied. 2 police cars. An ambulance. A black SUV with tinted windows, something we'd never seen in Brookbend. Sydney texted me, "Meet me at Pinewood." I didn't need to ask what was happening. Everybody in town was already talking about it. Someone died last night. I threw on my hoodie, grabbed my bike, and pedaled so fast my legs burned. When I reached Pinewood Drive, half the town stood behind the yellow tape, whispering. Whispering about the body. Whispering about the man on the roof. Whispering about the thing he did to you if he looked at you too long. And when Sydney saw me, she jogged over and grabbed my arm. "It's him," she said. "Who?" "Mr. Jacobs." My stomach dropped. Mr. Jacobs lived alone at the edge of the street. A quiet, harmless man. Kind eyes. Lived with 3 cats, all named after old presidents. He taught Sunday school. He baked bread for the church fundraiser every year. What happened to him? I asked. Sydney swallowed hard. They won't let anyone close. But someone said his body wasn't right. Not right how? She shook her head. I don't know. A tall man in a long black coat stepped out of the SUV and walked toward the officers. He spoke with them briefly, then ducked under the tape and entered Mr. Jacobs' house. Who's that? I asked. A detective, I think. But something about him didn't look like local police. He stood straighter, moved sharper, eyes scanning everything. He was from somewhere else. Somewhere more dangerous. Hey, Sydney whispered, look at that. I followed her gaze. 2 officers carrying something out of the house in a black zipped bag. Mr. Jacobs. People gasped. Others turned away. But the detective didn't flinch. He watched the body bag with the calmness of someone who had seen too many of them. Then he looked up. His eyes landed on me. And stayed. A strange ripple of recognition passed through his expression, like he'd been expecting me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Come on, Sydney said. Let's get out of here. We turned and walked toward our bikes. That's when I saw her. Standing alone near the maple tree, staring at the crime scene. A girl about my age. Long black hair. Gray hoodie. Barely blinking. I'd never seen her before. And in a small town like ours, that meant she didn't belong. She didn't look like she was with anyone. Didn't look scared. Didn't look surprised. Just watchful. She noticed me staring and tilted her head, exactly like the man on the roof. A cold shiver ripped through me. She mouthed something. A single word. Run. Before I could react, Sydney tugged my sleeve. Noah, come on. I blinked and looked back. The girl was gone. The detective knows more than he says. By lunchtime, the whole school buzzed with rumors. He had no marks on him. His face was all twisted, like someone bent him wrong. I heard his blood was gone. His eyes were open. No sign of a break-in. Cops found footprints on his porch roof, like someone was crouching there. Someone. Or something. I tried to focus on my sandwich in the cafeteria. Tried to ignore the looks people gave me. Because everyone knew. The man on the roof stared at me the night before. I'd been singled out. Sydney slammed her tray down beside me. Eat, she said. You look dead. I'm fine. You're not fine. She lowered her voice. No, everyone's saying he stared at you. I clenched my jaw. People say a lot of things. That girl by the tree, did you recognize her? Who was she? I don't know. She said something to me. What? I hesitated. Run. Sydney's breath caught. Wait, run from what? I don't know. But I did know. I just didn't want to say it. The man on the roof. The viewer. The thing that descended from the house like gravity was an option, not a rule. He'd chosen me. Whether I liked it or not. The detective finds me. We left school early. My mother insisted. Parents were checking kids out left and right, terrified of another death. I walked home with Sydney, and we stopped at the corner where Elm Street met Bramble Hill. The Halden house loomed above us. That place feels worse now, Sydney murmured. Because of him? No. It feels older. Like something inside woke up. I didn't want to admit she was right. We crossed the street, approaching our neighborhood, when a car pulled up beside us. A black sedan. The window rolled down. It was the detective. Up close, he looked even more intense. Sharp cheekbones. Dark, tired eyes. A small scar near his lip. "Noah Caldwell?" he asked. My chest tightened. "Yeah. I need a word." Sydney stepped forward, protective as ever. "You can talk to both of us." The detective studied her, then nodded. "Fine. Get in." We exchanged a glance. Fear, hesitation, curiosity, and climbed in. He drove slowly down the street. "My name is Detective Marcus Hale," he said. "I'm not here as a local officer. I'm here on federal assignment." "Federal?" I repeated. "Cases like this fall under my unit's jurisdiction." "What cases?" Sydney asked. He exhaled. "Unexplained deaths. Sightings. Patterns." He glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "People who appear on roofs." My stomach dropped. "You know about him?" I whispered. Hale nodded once. "We call him a looker. Sometimes a watcher. Sometimes an observer. Different cultures have different names." Sydney swallowed. "What is he?" "Not human," Hale said. "Not anymore." That word, "hinmer," froze my blood. "He always starts the same way," the detective continued. "A sighting. A gathering. A choosing." "A choosing?" I asked. "He selects someone. Fixates. Shadows them. Learns them. And then..." He paused. "And then what?" Sydney demanded. Hale's jaw tightened. "Then the deaths begin. One by one. Always starting with someone the chosen person knows. Someone close by." I felt sick. Mr. Jacobs lived 2 houses from mine. "He's not finished," the detective said quietly. "This will get worse." "Then stop him." I snapped. Hale looked at me with something like pity. If I could have, I would have done it years ago. A chill swept over me. "Years. Plural. How do you know so much about him?" I whispered. Hale hesitated, then answered in a low voice, almost reluctant. "Because the first time I saw him, I was your age." My heart thudded. "The same way you did," he continued. "Same pose. Same tilt of the head. Same timing." "What happened?" Sydney asked softly. Hale didn't blink. "He chose me." The car went silent. Dead silent. "And you survived?" I whispered. "Barely," Hale said. "But I didn't stop him. I only delayed him." He stopped the car in front of my house and turned to face me. "Noah, listen to me carefully." His voice sharpened, full of urgency. "He is not interested in the town. He is not interested in your neighbors. He is here for you." My throat tightened. "No." He looked at other people too. "But he marked you." "How?" "By choosing you. By singling you out. By studying you." I shook my head. "This is insane." Hale leaned closer. "You need to understand something. He doesn't chase loud people. The loud, the confident, the public, he ignores them." "Then who does he chase?" "The quiet ones. The unnoticed ones. The ones who think they can disappear." A cold realization spread through me. I'd always been quiet, blended in, middle of the crowd. Never first. Never last. I was exactly his type. "He grows stronger with attention," Hale said. "And with fear. And last night..." He looked at me gravely. "You gave him both." My pulse hammered. "Then what do I do?" I whispered. "You don't run," Hale said. "That's when he gets fastest. You don't turn your back either. And you don't fear him." "But I do fear him." "Then you'd better learn to hide it." He opened the car door. "But remember, Noel, if he's watching you..." He hesitated. "He's not the only one looking." "What does that mean?" I asked. But he didn't answer. He just nodded at Sydney. "Stay with him tonight. He'll need someone." Sydney squeezed my arm. "Come on. Let's get inside." We climbed out. Hale rolled down the window one last time. "Noah," he said, "tonight no matter what happens." His eyes hardened. "Don't look out your window." My stomach sank. "Why not?" I asked. "Because he'll be there." The car drove off. leaving me and Sydney frozen on the sidewalk. The girl returns. That night, I didn't sleep. Sydney stayed over, claiming she didn't trust me not to die. We camped out in my room with snacks, flashlights, and my baseball bat. Not that it would help. At 11:42 p.m., something tapped on my window. Sydney sat up instantly. No, you heard that, right? My heart slammed against my ribs. Hale's warning echoed in my mind. Don't look out your window. Sydney whispered, don't look. Something dragged across the glass. Screech. Slow. Deliberate. Taunting. I squeezed my eyes shut. A soft voice. Noah. Sydney's breath caught. That's not his voice, she whispered. I turned my head and froze. It wasn't the man on the roof. It was the girl from the crime scene. Her face pressed against the glass. Her eyes wide, too wide. Her lips moving, repeating one word. Run. She slammed her palm against the window. Sydney screamed. The girl vanished. And suddenly, every light in the house went out. We were plunged into darkness. Sydney grabbed my arm. No, he's here. And something moved outside. Slow. Measured. Heavy. A shadow passed by the window. And then, a voice I would never forget. Scraping. Wrong. Noah. He had found me. And the night had only just begun. The rain had stopped by morning, but the clouds hung low and heavy, like the sky itself hadn't slept. Detective Mina Locke stood in her kitchen, staring at the report still open on her phone. Her coffee sat untouched. Every paragraph she reread only made the whole situation worse. 3 unexplained deaths in 2 weeks. All victims claimed a strange man was watching. No signs of forced entry. No signs of struggle. And at each scene, a window had been found open, even in homes where the windows had been sealed shut for years. But the worst detail? Every victim had been found staring at the ceiling with their eyes wide open, frozen in terror. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random. And after last night, Mina knew one thing for certain. The killer didn't need to break in. He was already inside. The call that changed everything. Mina's phone buzzed with a new message. From dispatch. Locke, new case. Same pattern. Address sent. Coroner already on scene. Her stomach tightened. Another one. She grabbed her coat, clipped her badge to her belt, and was halfway out the door when her neighbor, Mrs. Keener, poked her head out. You're up early again, detective. Everything all right? Mina forced a nod. Just work. Mrs. Keener smiled sympathetically. Be careful out there. I swear, the world gets stranger every day. You have no idea, Mina thought. She reached her car, slid in, and started the engine. Her reflection in the windshield looked more tired than she remembered. Maybe she hadn't slept. Maybe nobody had. Not after what she saw on that roof. The man. Not moving. Not blinking. Just staring down at her like she was an insect pinned under glass. She pushed the memory away. Focus. Breathe. The 4th victim. By the time Mina arrived at the address, the perimeter tape fluttered in the chilly morning breeze. Uniformed officers milled around the front of the apartment complex. Coroner Dr. Elias Harrow stood by the stairs, hands in his coat pockets, his expression grim. Mina, he greeted when she approached. You're not going to like this. When do I ever? She muttered. He started up the stairs. This one is different. How? You'll see. They reached the 2nd floor. Apartment 2B. The door was wide open. A cold draft seeped out like the building itself was breathing. Inside, officers were gathering evidence with hushed voices. Mina entered the bedroom and froze. The victim, a woman in her 40s, lay on the carpet beside her bed. Eyes wide open. Mouth slightly parted. Face twisted as if she had seen something unbearable. Same as the others. But Dr. Harrow pointed at the wall beside her. Look there. A message had been carved into the paint. Not written. Scratched into the wall with fingernails. Mina stepped closer. Her breath caught. Don't look up. Her pulse spiked. Dr. Harrow kept his voice low. We found skin under her nails. She carved it, While she was dying, Mina whispered. Yes. Mina looked at the ceiling. It was clean. Empty. Normal. But the victim had written the warning anyway. Don't look up. But was someone up there? Something? Watching? The security footage. Officer Grant hurried into the room, out of breath. Detective Locke. We got something. Mina followed him to the building's security room. The front desk guard sat rigidly, pale, replaying the same footage over and over. You're going to want to see this, Grant said. On the screen was the hallway outside apartment 2B. Timestamp, 2:43 a.m. The victim's door opened, slowly, like someone was nudging it from the inside. Then the woman stepped out, trembling, holding her phone. She kept glancing behind her, as if something was following. She looked terrified. She reached the hallway, turned, looked directly at the camera. Her lips formed two words. He's here. Then she was yanked backward. Violently. Swiftly. Like something had hooked her by the shoulders. But no one appeared on camera. No hand. No shadow. Nothing. Just the woman being dragged backward into her apartment, the door slamming behind her. Mina leaned closer. Rewind. Slow it down. Grant played it again at half speed. And that's when Mina saw it. The door didn't close from the inside. It closed from above. Something dropped down from the ceiling frame, thin, fast, and pushed it shut. A chill went through her spine. What was that? Grant whispered. Mina swallowed. It looked like a hand, but too long, too thin, too pale, not human. The roof again. Mina stepped outside, needing air. The morning was gray and cold, but she barely felt it. Her eyes drifted upward, past the windows, to the rooftop ledge. A man was sitting there. Her breath stopped. Same posture. Same stillness. Same blank face. He was looking down at her. No blinking. No breathing. No movement. Just watching. Grant, she shouted. Second unit, get eyes on the roof. Officers scrambled, but Mina sprinted ahead, boots pounding the metal stairs as she climbed. She reached the rooftop door, slammed it open, empty. But the gravel on the roof was disturbed, leading to the far edge. Mina approached slowly, peered down. Nothing. Whoever, or whatever, she'd seen was gone. The note left behind. Grant joined her moments later, panting hard. Nobody came down the stairs. Nobody crossed the fire escape. He vanished. Mina didn't respond. She was staring at something on the gravel near her feet. A folded piece of paper. The wind hadn't moved it, despite the breeze. Like someone had placed it there just moments ago. She carefully opened it. Inside, written in thin, shaky handwriting. I only sit where I'm invited. Thank you for seeing me, asterisk asterisk. Grant stepped closer. What the hell does that mean? Mina shook her head. The handwriting. It looked familiar. Then her brain caught up. This is the same script that was carved on the first victim's window frame, she whispered. Grant's eyes widened. Then he's taunting you. Not taunting. Recognizing. As if the killer, or the thing, had chosen her. The survivor. Before Mina could respond, her phone buzzed again. Dispatch. Detective Locke, the woman from the grocery store abduction attempt. She survived the attack. She's awake and asking for you. Mina's eyes shot up. Finally. A witness. Which hospital? She asked. St. Havens. I'm on my way. Grant hesitated. Do you want backup? Mina shook her head. No. If the guy on the roof wanted me dead, I'd be dead. Grant didn't argue. He just swallowed hard. The woman who saw his face. St. Havens Hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Nurses hurried past with clipboards. An orderly pushed a cart of linens. Everything felt normal, too normal for what Mina was about to hear. Room 317. Mina pushed the door open gently. The survivor, Elise Caro, sat propped up in bed. Her hands trembled. Her eyes were red-rimmed. A bandage covered the side of her face. When she saw Mina, her breath hitched. The HIV from before, she whispered. Yes, Mina said softly. I need to ask you some questions. Elise nodded, but tears welled instantly. "He followed me," she said. "I knew he would. I knew he wasn't finished." "Who followed you?" "The man. The one who sits on rooftops." Mina froze. Elise's fingers gripped the blanket tightly. "I didn't want to look up," she whispered. "I tried so hard. But I heard it. The scraping. Like something crawling on the ceiling." "What did you see, Elise?" Elise swallowed. "He drops down." She shivered violently. Like an insect, but shaped like a man. Mina felt her heart stop. Elise continued, voice thin and broken. "He doesn't blink. Not once. And if you look him in the eyes, really look, he gets inside. He learns you. He waits." Mina leaned in. "Waits for what?" Elise's voice cracked. "For you to be alone." The final moment. "Elise," Mina said gently, "did you see his face clearly?" Elise sucked in a shaky breath. "Yes, I did." Mina's pulse quickened. "Can you describe him?" Elise nodded. "He looked like a person who forgot how to be alive." Mina wrote quickly, but Elise lifted a trembling hand. "No, that's not the important part. The important part is..." She stopped, stared over Mina's shoulder. Her eyes went wide with horror. Mina's stomach dropped. She turned slowly. The window of room 317 was cracked open. Just an inch. Just enough. Something pale and thin curled over the windowsill. Like fingers. Unmoving. Elise gasped, voice barely audible. "He found me." Mina stood up immediately. "Security. Now." She rushed to the window and yanked it open. But there was nothing outside. Only the flat hospital rooftop 4 stories below. Empty. No rooftop figure. No crawling thing. Nothing. But the air was freezing, as if something had just slipped away. Elise's confession. When Mina closed the window and turned back, Elise was sobbing. "I'm dead," Elise whispered. "He doesn't let people go. Not once he chooses them." Mina grabbed her shoulder. "You're safe here." "No," Elise cried. "Don't you understand? If he sees you, if you see him, it's already too late." Mina frowned. "What do you mean?" Elise looked at her with absolute certainty. "You looked right at him on that roof, didn't you?" Mina didn't answer. She didn't need to. Elise swallowed hard. "He's chosen you next." The automatic doors of St. Haven's slid shut behind Detective Mina Locke, but the cold air clung to her like invisible hands. Elise's final words repeated in her mind like a cursed echo. "You looked right at him. He's chosen you next." Chosen. Mina had heard dozens of killers talk about choosing their victims. Serial predators loved theatrics, symbolism, ritual. But this, whatever this thing was, didn't behave like anything she'd seen before. No fingerprints. No footage beyond shadows. No forced entry. No sound. And no blinking. Her car felt too quiet as she slid inside. Too still. For a moment she sat there, hands gripping the wheel, heart thudding. "You're tired," she told herself. "You're rattled. This case is getting under your skin." But even as she tried to convince herself, she couldn't shake the sensation that something was wrong with the world around her, subtly off-kilter, like the air pressure before a storm. Her phone buzzed. "Dispatch. Locke. Lieutenant wants you back at HQ. Says it's urgent." Of course he does, she thought, starting the engine. The hospital shrank in the rearview mirror as she drove away. But she didn't notice the dark figure standing perfectly still on the rooftop, watching her car fade into the distance. The interview room. Lieutenant Darren Holt looked older than usual. His gray hair seemed grayer, his shoulders more slumped. He motioned for Mina to sit. "You look exhausted," he said. "Because I am." "You went to see the surviving witness?" "Yes," Mina replied. "She saw him. She described him." Then Mina hesitated. "She said he's coming for her." Lieutenant Holt rubbed his eyes. "This is the 4th death connected to this case, Mina. 3 deaths. Elise is still alive." "For now," Holt muttered under his breath. Mina stiffened. "What does that mean?" Holt pushed a folder toward her. Photos spilled out. pictures she hadn't seen yet. A fifth victim. Found 30 minutes ago. A man in his late 20s, lying in his living room. Eyes wide. Face frozen mid-scream. A window cracked open. Mina stared. We were just at the hospital. How? He's accelerating, Holt said quietly. Or getting bolder. Mina swallowed hard. Holt continued, there's more. This victim lived 2 blocks from the hospital. He died around the same time you were visiting Elise. Mina looked up sharply. So he was nearby? Yes. Mina felt something shift inside her, cold, sharp, like a piece of ice settling in her stomach. And, Holt added, Elise Caro is missing. Mina jerked upright. What? Room 317 is empty. Nurses assumed she went for tests, but she never checked out. Security saw her limping toward the east wing stairwell. Then she vanished. Mina felt the blood drain from her face. He took her, she whispered. Holt set his jaw. You need to find her. Fast. The stairwell. Mina's tires screeched against the pavement as she slammed into St. Haven's parking lot for the second time that day. The east wing stairwell was deserted, silent in a way no hospital should ever be. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering faintly. Mina's voice echoed up the concrete shaft. Elise. Nothing. She descended the stairs slowly, one hand on her holster. Halfway down, she noticed something smeared along the wall. A dark streak. Thin. Vertical. She touched it lightly. Blood. Still warm. Elise, she called again. Her voice bounced around the stairwell, returning to her like a whisper. At the first floor landing, she saw more blood, drops leading toward a service hallway. Mina followed cautiously. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She turned the corner and froze. The drawing. A maintenance door stood ahead, slightly ajar. On it, drawn in what looked like black ink, or maybe dried blood, was a symbol. A circle. Inside it, a crude drawing of a man sitting cross-legged at the edge of a building. Stick figure simple but unmistakable. The man on the roof. Beneath it, written in jagged letters. He sits where he can see you best. Mina stepped back involuntarily. This wasn't a killer leaving taunts. This was a message for Elise. Or from Elise. Her radio crackled. Dispatch. Detective Locke, we have a situation. Mina lifted it to her mouth. Go. Someone just reported a man sitting on the roof of St. Haven's. He hasn't moved in over 20 minutes. Mina turned her head slowly toward the nearest window. The roof line was visible from here, and she saw him, silhouetted against the gray sky. Back straight, hands resting on his knees, facing her directly. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. The run to the roof. Mina sprinted, up the stairs, through the hallway, past startled nurses. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her legs burned, lungs stung, but adrenaline pushed her onward. She burst through the rooftop access door. Wind hit her in the face like a slap. The roof was barren, scattered with vents, satellite dishes, HVAC units, and the figure. Exactly where she'd seen him minutes ago. She drew her gun. Freeze. The figure didn't move, didn't react, didn't blink. Mina approached slowly, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Turn around, she ordered. No response. She stepped closer. Turn around. Still nothing. She was 6 feet away now. The figure sat perfectly still, too still. And then she realized something horrifying. He wasn't breathing. At all. Mina stepped forward, swallowing her fear. Hey, she shouted louder. Show me your face. She reached out and touched his shoulder. He toppled sideways like a mannequin. Hollow. Mina staggered back. Jesus. The figure wasn't a man. It wasn't a body. It was a husk, a dried, brittle shell of human skin, empty inside, like someone had worn the body from the inside and then stepped out of it. Or like something had used the body, then abandoned it. A gust of wind lifted the husk's head, and it cracked apart like an old leaf. Fragments blew across the rooftop like dust. Mina's stomach twisted violently. What the hell was she dealing with? The sound. A sound broke through the wind. So, wet, close, drip, drip, drip. Mina followed it to the edge of the roof. A smear of blood streaked across the ledge and dripped down the side of the building. "Elise," she whispered. She leaned over the edge. 4 stories down, on a narrow maintenance balcony below, she saw Elise, barely conscious, on her knees, shoulder bleeding, trying to stand. "Elise!" Mina shouted. Elise lifted her head weakly. Her eyes widened, not at Mina. Above Mina. Behind her. Mina spun. Nothing. The rooftop was empty except for pieces of the discarded husk. A shadow moved. Not on the ground. Not cast by the sun. A shadow moved across the air itself, sliding along the rooftop like a living thing. Then it vanished behind a ventilation unit. Mina raised her gun and approached slowly. Her breathing was ragged. Her heart hammered. She aimed around the corner. Empty. She sighed shakily, lowering the gun. Something dropped from above. A blur of pale limbs. Too long. Too fast. Too silent. It landed behind her with a soft, sickening thud. Mina spun again, but the rooftop was empty. Except for the small piece of paper lying at her feet. Shaking, she picked it up. It was the same handwriting as last time. "I sit above those who fear below. And you fear me now, asterisk asterisk." Mina's skin crawled. Elise screamed from the balcony below. Mina rushed to the edge, but when she looked down, Elise was gone. Only a smear of blood remained. The realization. Mina backed away from the ledge, breathing hard. The drawings. The messages. The shadow that moved without a source. Her mind raced. This wasn't a human killer. It wasn't even pretending anymore. It hunted from ceilings. It watched from rooftops. It took people when they were alone. And now, it knew her. It wanted her. It had chosen her. Mina felt the weight of the rooftop settle around her like a closing fist. The wind felt colder. The sky felt heavier. And for the first time since the case began, Detective Mina Locke felt genuinely terrified. She holstered her gun, backing slowly toward the rooftop door. But something inside her whispered, "It's already here. It's already watching. It's already above you." Mina didn't look up. She couldn't. Because she knew if she did, she might never breathe again. Detective Mina Locke had been afraid before. Kidnappers, armed gunmen, sociopaths who smiled as they confessed. But this fear felt different. It wasn't sharp or sudden. It was slow and suffocating, like breathing through cotton. Something was moving through her city. Something that didn't blink. Something that didn't breathe. Something that left empty skins behind like discarded clothing. Something that had Elise Caro. The storm clouds hanging over St. Havens swirled low and heavy, turning late afternoon into premature twilight. Mina stood beside her car, staring at the hospital rooftop one last time before forcing herself inside the vehicle. She shut the door, locked it. For a moment, the silence was almost comforting. Then something moved in the rearview mirror. Mina spun. Nothing. Just the back seat. Empty. "You're jumpy," she told herself. "You need sleep." But she knew sleep wouldn't come anymore. She put the car in drive and peeled out of the hospital lot. Headquarters. Lieutenant Holt's office was dim, lit only by his desk lamp and the gray sludge of cloud-filtered daylight. He didn't look up as Mina entered. "You're pale," he said, flipping through paperwork. "You need a minute?" "We don't have a minute," Mina shot back. "Elise is gone. And we found a..." She hesitated, searching for a word that didn't sound insane. "A body shell. Like human skin left behind." Holt rubbed his temples. "Look, you've been on this case for 48 hours straight. You're overstressed." "Don't do that," Mina said. "Don't dismiss me. You didn't see it." "Then explain it again," Holt said calmly. Slowly. Mina swallowed. "I found what looked like a human body sitting upright. But when I touched it, it collapsed. Hollow. Brittle. Like it had been drained or abandoned." Holt leaned back in his chair. "Like a snake shedding its skin?" "No," Mina said softly. "Snakes leave the shape. This thing left a person." She waited for him to challenge her. He didn't. Instead he opened a drawer, retrieved a thin black binder, and slid it toward her. "What's this?" Mina asked. "A file you haven't seen." Holt tapped the cover. This isn't the first time someone reported a hollow body. Mina froze. "What?" Holt nodded grimly. 9 years ago. Different district. No suspect. No explanation. The case was buried. Mina flipped open the binder. A faded crime scene photo stared back at her. A woman slumped in a chair, skin intact but body empty, crumpled like a deflated balloon. Mina felt a jolt of nausea. "It's him," she whispered. "It has to be." Holt lowered his voice. That case had an eyewitness. Mina's eyes snapped up. "Who?" "Her daughter. 6 years old at the time." "Where is she now?" "Dead," Holt said. 8 months later. Claimed she kept seeing a man on the ceiling in her room. One morning her parents found her on the floor, neck broken. Medical examiner said she fell out of bed. Mina shook her head slowly. "No. She was running. Trying to get away." Holt didn't disagree. "The map." Mina stared at the photo until her eyes blurred. "What else are you not telling me?" she asked quietly. Holt exhaled. "You're not going to like it." He pulled out a folded map and spread it on the desk. Several red pins marked locations across the city. 6 hollow body cases, never connected officially. 3 missing persons, all within a 15-mile radius. Mina leaned over the map. No pattern. No timeline. Why these houses? Why these victims? "Maybe they weren't chosen," Holt said. "Maybe they were convenient." Mina traced the cluster of pins. Then she froze. "Lieutenant, these locations form a circle." Holt frowned. "A circle?" "Yes. Look, these 3 anchor points align perfectly. And these curve around. It's crude, but... So what's at the center?" Holt asked. Mina fell silent as realization washed over her. "The center point was St. Haven's Hospital." Holt saw her expression. "You think it's hunting near its home?" Mina shook her head. "No. Worse." She pointed at the map. "Whatever this thing is, it's expanding." Mina's phone buzzed violently. Unknown number. She answered. "Detective Locke." Static crackled. A faint voice. "Brett, we..." Terrified. "Mina?" "Elise." Mina's heart leapt. "Elise, where are you?" More static. "Russell." A gasp of pain. She's watching." "Elise, listen to me. Tell me where you are." A whisper. Above me." "Elise, look around. Are you in a building? A basement?" "No," Elise cried through static. "He's above you." Mina froze. "Elise? Elise." But the line cut out. The ceiling. Mina stood completely still. Her skin prickled. Her instinct screamed. Slowly, very slowly, she looked up at the ceiling of Holt's office. The fluorescent lights flickered. Something darker than shadow clung to the corner above the filing cabinets. A shape. The crouch. Long limbs folded like a spider. Watching her. Mina reached for her gun. Holt grabbed her arm. "What the hell are you?" But before he finished speaking, the shadow unfurled. A limb stretching impossibly long, sliding across the ceiling like a slick, living ribbon. Holt's eyes widened. "Jesus Christ." Mina fired. The bullet punched a hole through the ceiling tile. But the shape dissolved, skittering along the ceiling so fast it blurred, vanishing into the doorway and out into the hall. "Move!" Mina shouted, sprinting after it. The hall lights flickered violently as Mina ran. Officers poked their heads out of rooms, startled. "Locke, what's happening?" "Stay inside," she barked. "Shut your doors." She ran down the corridor, gun raised, eyes scanning upward. Ceiling tiles trembled. Something crawled above them, fast, heavy, impossibly silent for its size. It moved like liquid, like smoke, like a nightmare skittering across the edge of reality. Holt shouted behind her, "Locke, wait." But she didn't stop. Not until a tile directly above her bulged downward. Then exploded. Something dropped. Not fully. Just enough that she saw a pale, distorted face. Eyes like bottomless pits. A slack jaw hanging too wide. Skin stretched and thin, almost translucent. It opened its mouth and hissed. A sound like steam escaping a pipe. Mina fired again. Another ceiling tile shattered. The thing retreated with unnatural speed, the ceiling rippling in its wake. Mina gave chase. But suddenly the ceiling ahead caved inward. The body fell through. Not the creature. Elise Caro. She hit the floor with a sickening thud. Mina screamed, "Ino? Elise!" She dropped to her knees beside her. Elise's eyes were half open. Her lips trembled. "Amina," she whispered. "You're okay. I've got you. Stay with me." Elise lifted a trembling hand. Pointed upward. Here. Mina looked up, just as the ceiling above them bulged outward like a balloon. The creature dropped. Mina rolled, dragging Elise with her. The thing landed where Mina had been moments earlier, cracking the tiles beneath it. It was pale. Wrong. Limbs too thin and too many joints. Head tilting sideways like it lacked bones. Skin hanging as if it were a costume draped over something else. It crawled toward them. On the ceiling. On the walls. On the air itself. Mina fired 3 precise shots. 2 missed. The third hit square in its chest. The creature jerked back, and then slowly tilted its head to look at the bullet hole. No blood. Just a small tear in the skin. Then it looked back at Mina. And smiled. An awful, skin-stretching smile that didn't use muscles. It simply widened, like the face was clay being pulled apart. Elise screamed. Mina fired again. But the creature was already gone, rushing up the wall and into a vent with a liquid shutter. Silence crashed down. Elise's warning. Paramedics rushed Elise to a stretcher, but she clutched Mina's sleeve with surprising strength. "Where's people?" Elise whispered urgently. Mina froze. "What?" Elise's eyes rolled with terror. "He doesn't have a body. He uses yours. And when he's done, he leaves it behind." Mina felt ice spill down her spine. "Elise, how do we stop him?" Elise stared at her, trembling. "You don't," she whispered. "He doesn't follow the living." Mina frowned. "What does that mean?" Elise shivered violently, eyes filling with tears. "He follows the frightened." Detective Aidan Cole didn't sleep the night after rescuing Sarah Whitlock from the abandoned factory rooftop. He lay awake replaying the image of the man, no, the figure, that vanished before his eyes with a grin carved too wide for a human face. Sarah's words echoed like a haunting lullaby. "He sits on roofs because he doesn't like the ground. He says the ground remembers him." Aidan didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But he would. Because tonight, the shadow would move again. This time, closer. 1. The thing that lingered. Aidan arrived back at the station before sunrise. The others filtered in slowly, unaware of the storm creeping toward them. He'd already reviewed the rooftop footage from the factory 10 times. Every time, the same impossibility happened. Sarah crawls toward the edge. The figure stands behind her. And as Aidan enters the frame, the figure flickers like a skipped video frame and disappears. No jump. No blur. Just gone. Aidan paused the video again, staring at the single frame where the figure's eyes glowed faintly, 2 static points of pale white, like headlights seen through fog. Detective Mariah Jacobs walked in carrying 2 coffees. "You look like you fought the devil and lost." Aidan didn't bother responding. He pushed the laptop toward her. "Watch." Mariah leaned closer. Seconds passed. Then the moment came. "What the hell?" she whispered. Aidan nodded. "Exactly. This is tampered with. It has to be." He sighed. "Check the metadata." Mariah clicked through the files, her face tightening. "It's clean. No edits. No compression anomalies. The footage is raw." Aidan leaned back in his chair. Whatever that thing is, it was with Sarah for days. Weeks maybe. Mariah frowned at the screen. What if she's not his first? That stopped Aidan cold. "What makes you say that?" Mariah zoomed in on the paused image. The figure's silhouette was gaunt, limbs too long, head tilted unnaturally. But behind him, just barely visible, was something else. Graffiti. A single line of spray-painted words on the rooftop wall, half erased by rain. He watches the quiet ones. Mariah stared at it. That doesn't look like new graffiti. That looks old. Aiden grabbed his coat. We're finding whoever painted it. 2. The girl who saw him first. They drove across town to the record address of the rooftops property owner, an apartment building manager named Ms. Eliza Marin, age 54. She answered the door cautiously, peeking out with tired eyes. Aiden showed his badge. We'd like to ask about the rooftop graffiti on Ridgely Factory. Do you know who might have painted it? Her reaction was immediate. Her breath hitched. Her face drained of color. She didn't open the door wider, she closed it. Through the crack, she whispered, "He's back?" Aiden wedged his foot in the door. Who? She shook her head violently. I don't want to talk about him. Mariah softened her voice. Ms. Marin, someone almost died. If you know anything. Ms. Marin trembled. Then, after a long silence, she opened the door fully. You'd better come in. They sat on her vinyl couch while she smoked with shaking hands. It wasn't graffiti, she said quietly. It was a warning. A warning from who? Aiden asked. Ms. Marin looked out the window, scanning the rooftops across the street as though expecting someone to be perched there. From my daughter. Before she disappeared. Aiden stiffened. Your daughter was involved? Ms. Marin nodded slowly. She was 16. Always climbing things. She painted on the factory roof one night and came home white as paper. What did she tell you? That a man was sitting on the edge watching her. Mariah exhaled. The same man Sarah saw? Ms. Marin nodded again. She said he didn't blink. Didn't move. Just sat there like he was waiting for something. She told him to leave her alone and ran home. Aiden leaned forward. What happened next? Ms. Marin crushed the cigarette into the ashtray, her jaw trembling. She started sleepwalking. Every night I'd find her staring out the window, whispering. One night she wasn't in the house. I ran outside. Her voice broke. And she was on the factory roof again. Just standing there. I screamed for her to come down. She turned toward me and her eyes, she shuddered violently. They weren't her eyes anymore. Aiden's heartbeat slowed to a cold crawl. What happened to her? He asked. Ms. Marin looked directly at him. She stepped off the roof. The silence that filled the room was suffocating. Aiden spoke gently. I'm sorry. Truly. But Ms. Marin wasn't done. She didn't fall like a girl. She fell like someone dropped her. Like she was pulled. Aiden's skin prickled. And you believed her graffiti was a warning? Mariah asked. Ms. Marin nodded. It was her last message before he took her mind. Aiden took a breath. Ms. Marin, what was your daughter's name? Ilara. Mariah froze. Ilara Marin, she repeated quietly. Aiden turned to her. You know the name? Mariah swallowed hard. Aiden, she's on the missing persons list from 10 years ago. But her case was ruled a suicide. Ms. Marin let out a desperate, bitter laugh. A suicide? That's what they said. Because no one believes in him. Aiden leaned in. Believe in who? She whispered the words like a curse. The man who sits on roofs. 3. The rooftop in the woods. That night, Aiden couldn't stop thinking about Ilara Marin. He read through her case file until sunrise. Age, 16. Cause of death, suicide, fall from height. Notes, sleepwalking reported prior to incident. Mother's claim, she was being watched. Aiden had heard those words before. From Sarah. From another missing teen case 3 years ago. From a boy found wandering a parking garage rooftop in 2018. A pattern was forming, whether the world wanted to see it or not. At 6 a.m., Aiden and Mariah were back in the car driving to an address they'd found in Ilara's old belongings, a cabin her family owned deep in Black Hollow Woods. The GPS barely worked this far out. They arrived at a clearing with a collapsed shed and a half-burnt cabin. Vines strangled the roof. The windows were boarded from the inside. Mariah whispered, her diary said she sleepwalked here sometimes. Aiden's flashlight cut a beam through the dusty dark as he pushed the door open. Inside, the air felt thick and stale, like it hadn't been breathed in years. The cabin was empty except for a single wooden chair in the center of the room, facing the window. It was placed too precisely, as if someone had been sitting there, watching. Mariah circled the room. Why would a girl come here? Aiden didn't answer, because something else had caught his eye. Scratched deep into the window frame, so deep the wood splintered, were 9 words. He sits where you can't see him in time. Mariah crouched, her face pale. Aiden, that's the same handwriting as the graffiti. Aiden exhaled slowly. Ilara was trying to warn someone. Mariah's phone buzzed sharply in the quiet. She flinched. It's Sarah, she said. She's asking if we saw him last night. Says he's moving again. Aiden's stomach dropped. Moving where? Mariah read the text aloud. He's not on the roofs today. He's on the ground. Looking for you. Aiden grabbed the phone. Call her. Now. Mariah dialed. Ringing. Ringing. Then Sarah answered in a whisper. He's outside my window. The call that shouldn't have been possible. Sarah, listen carefully, Aiden whispered into the phone. Do not open your blinds. Stay low. Where are you right now? My room, she whispered back. He's just standing there. Mariah mouthed to Aiden. Her room is on the 2nd floor. Aiden froze. 2nd floor. How could anyone be outside her window? Sarah, Aiden said, forcing his voice to stay calm, describe what you see. He's not like before. He's taller now. His legs look wrong, like they bend backwards. Aiden motioned for Mariah to call patrol units to Sarah's home immediately. Sarah, don't move. We're coming. There's more, she whispered. Aiden clenched the phone tighter. What more? A long pause. He's smiling at me, but his mouth isn't moving. Aiden felt the temperature in the cabin drop. Sarah continued softly. He says he likes you, Detective Cole. He says you're finally paying attention. Aiden's blood ran cold. Sarah, how is he talking to you? She swallowed audibly. His shadow is talking, not him. What do you mean? Aiden, she whispered, voice breaking. His shadow is on my ceiling. Mariah's breath caught in her throat. Aiden's heart hammered. Sarah, get away from the ceiling. Get under the bed. Now. But Sarah didn't answer. Instead, the line distorted with static. Crackling. Buzzing. Then a second voice spoke through the phone. A voice not human. Not possible. A voice like wind scraping broken glass. You're too late. The call ended. 5. The shadow that moved. Aiden and Mariah were in the car, racing towards Sarah's house, sirens screaming behind them. Every second felt like another step the thing took toward her. They arrived in under 7 minutes. Sarah's house was silent. Too silent. A patrol officer ran up to Aiden. We knocked. No answer. Aiden didn't wait. He kicked the door open. Sarah, he shouted. No reply. He sprinted up the stairs to her bedroom. The door was closed. Aiden pushed it open and froze. The room was empty. Window open. Curtains fluttering in the cold wind. Mariah whispered, "Oh God." On the floor, in the center of the room, Sarah's phone lay face down, screen cracked. Aiden picked it up slowly. A new message notification pulsed. He opened it. A single sentence. No number. No sender. Just text. She's on the roof. Aiden ran to the window. Looked up. And his heart stopped. Because on the rooftop of Sarah's house, 3 stories high, a figure was perched at the edge. But it wasn't Sarah. It was the man. Long legs bent unnaturally. Neck tilted too far. White eyes glowing faintly. He turned slowly, deliberately, and pointed upward with a long, shaking finger. Not at Aiden. At something above him. Aiden looked up and saw a second shadow stretching across the shingles. A shadow with Sarah's outline, but no Sarah. Just her shadow, moving on its own. Mariah whispered, "Where's her body?" Aiden stared at the roof, breath frozen in his throat. "She's not a body anymore," he whispered. The shadow on the roof turned its head, as if it could hear him, and it smiled. The new target. They sprinted to the patrol car. The Whitlock girl, Aiden said, frantic. Sarah mentioned him watching her sister sometimes. The little one, Emily. He's going after her next. Mariah slammed the car door. You think he targets siblings? I think he targets whoever watches him too long. Like Ilara Marin, Mariah whispered. Aiden hit the sirens. They tore down the street, following the figure gliding through the sky, his silhouette flickering against the moon, too thin, too elongated, like a broken marionette carried by invisible strings. Lights flickered across the houses as they passed. People stepped onto porches, confused, staring at the dark shape moving above them. Dogs barked. Car alarms wavered. Aiden's phone buzzed with static again. Every electronic device around them was reacting to his presence. They pulled up to the Whitlock residence. The house was dark. Too dark. Aiden, Mariah whispered, her parents are out of town. The kids are home with a sitter. Aiden ran to the door and pounded. Emily, open up. No answer. He tried the handle. Unlocked. They rushed inside. 5. The little girl who didn't sleep. The babysitter, Anna Reed, 19, was sitting on the couch, wide-eyed. Detectives? What's happening? The lights went out. Something's on the roof. Aiden grabbed her shoulders. Where is Emily? Anna pointed upstairs. In her room. She wouldn't go to bed. She kept saying someone was calling her from outside. Aiden bolted up the stairs. Emily's door was slightly open. He pushed it gently. Inside, the little girl sat on the floor hugging her knees, staring out the window. Her night light flickered. Emily, Aiden said softly. She didn't turn to him. She whispered, He's not here for me. Aiden knelt beside her. Then who is he here for? Emily finally turned. Her eyes were wet with tears. Her voice small. He said he already took Sarah. Aiden's chest tightened. Emily, listen to me. He said he doesn't want me, she whispered. He wants you. Aiden froze. What? Emily pointed at the ceiling. He said you followed him too long. Aiden stood slowly. Mariah whispered from the doorway. Look. A long black shadow stretched across the ceiling. Not Emily's. Not Aiden's. A third shape. A tall one. And it was moving. The shadow lifted its head. Aiden drew his gun. Mariah stepped backward, trembling. Emily whispered, He said if you want Sarah back, you have to go where she went. Aiden swallowed. And where did she go? Emily pointed upward. Not at the ceiling. At the roof. Aiden set his jaw. Mariah, take Emily. Take Anna. Get out of the house. Now. Mariah grabbed Emily and Anna and hurried them downstairs. Aiden walked toward the ladder in the hall closet. The shadow on the ceiling crawled after him. He whispered to himself, If you want me, come get me. He stepped onto the ladder and climbed toward the roof. Above him, the shadow followed like a spider, growing larger with each step. Aiden Cole was about to confront the impossible, and he might not come back. The storm had rolled in fast, too fast for a coastal town that usually saw weather creep in like a shy guest. By the time Evelyn, Marcus, and Sheriff Dalton reached the rugged cliffs of Hawthorne Point, clouds had already swallowed the sky, turning the horizon into a smear of charcoal and bruised violet. Wind screamed across the rocks. Waves slammed against the cliffs like fists demanding entry. But none of that was what made Evelyn's breath hitch. It was the figure standing at the edge of the overlook. A thin man, motionless, alone, watching the sea. The same silhouette Evelyn had glimpsed near the Blackthorn Ward ruins 2 nights earlier. Tall, stiff, almost too still, as if held upright by invisible strings. She knew immediately. This was the man who had been following her. And he wasn't hiding anymore. Dalton raised his flashlight, shouting over the thunder, Sir, stay where you are. But the man didn't move. Marcus muttered, He's waiting. For what? Evelyn whispered. For us, Marcus replied. They approached cautiously, boots slipping against wet stone, wind nearly tearing their voices away. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her throat. She didn't know why, but she felt drawn toward this man, as if her entire life had been leading her to this moment. 20 feet away, the man finally turned his head, and Evelyn's blood went cold. His face wasn't right. Not monstrous. Not deformed. Just wrong. Like someone wearing human features learned them from memory rather than experience. Eyes that looked straight through her, a mouth neutral but too perfectly straight, skin with no blemishes, no pores, no texture. An uncanny, mannequin-like emptiness. He spoke in a voice flat enough to be mistaken for wind. Evelyn Hale. Her name shouldn't have sounded frightening, but from his lips, it felt like a curse. Dalton stepped forward, hand on his holster. "Sir, I'm going to need you to identify yourself and step away from the ledge." The man didn't answer immediately. He simply watched Evelyn with that chilling stillness, like prey waiting for the right moment to strike. Finally he said, "You don't remember me." It wasn't a question. "Who are you?" Evelyn demanded, heart thudding. The man's eyes flickered, barely, but enough for her to notice. As if a glitch had run through him. "You knew me," he said, "before the trial." "What trial?" she asked. Another flicker. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. Marcus put a hand on Evelyn's arm. "Don't get closer. Something's off with him." But she felt compelled, like a string was pulling her toward the stranger. "Tell me who you are," she insisted. The man tilted his head slightly, rain dripping down his expressionless face. Then he whispered, "You called me Patient Zero." Evelyn staggered back. Marcus froze. Dalton visibly tensed. Because that phrase shouldn't exist outside a sealed federal file. Evelyn choked out. That term was never public. It wasn't in the trial transcripts. It wasn't in any report. How do you know it? The man blinked, slow and mechanical. "You named me," he repeated. "In the beginning." "I've never seen you before," Evelyn said. "Not like this," the man replied. "But you were there. In room 19. Lightning cracked overhead, exploding in white fire that lit up the cliffs. Evelyn's breath vanished. This was impossible. Room 19 had been sealed in 1998. The real patient, the patient, had been found dead that same year. Hadn't he? Before she could speak again, the man stepped back. Toward the edge. Dalton reached out instinctively. "Sir, stop." But the man didn't stop. He looked directly at Evelyn and said with chilling calm, "There were others." And then he stepped backward and fell off the cliff. Evelyn screamed, lunging forward, but Marcus grabbed her before she could slip. Dalton pointed his flashlight down the jagged drop. Nothing. No splash. No floating body. No movement. He was simply gone. "Impossible," Dalton muttered. "No one survives that fall." Marcus looked pale. He wasn't trying to survive. Evelyn didn't hear either of them. She could only hear his final words echoing in her skull. There were others. The discovery. The drive back to the sheriff's office was silent except for the storm pounding the windshield. Evelyn stared out at the drenched coastline, her mind spiraling. Patient Zero was fictional. A placeholder. A nameless origin point for a psychiatric anomaly described in her internal notes, never meant to identify a real person. So how did that man know? Dalton finally broke the silence. "We'll search the base of Hawthorne Point once the storm clears. We'll find the body. Maybe fingerprints, maybe ID, something." Evelyn shook her head. "No, you won't." Marcus glanced at her. "You really think he, whatever he was, survived?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But he wasn't just some guy who got lucky with the fall." Dalton exhaled sharply. "Then what was he?" Evelyn pressed her fingers to her temples. Something that shouldn't exist. The tapes. Back at the office, Dalton had Evelyn and Marcus sit in his cramped conference room with the heater blasting. The walls vibrated softly with wind howling outside. Dalton dropped a stack of old VHS tapes onto the table. "These were found in the boxes from the Blackthorn Ward storage building," he said. "They're from 1997 to 1998. Most labeled R19. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Room 19. Marcus set up the old VCR, and Dalton dimmed the lights. The first tape rolled, grainy black and white footage showing a psychiatric ward hallway. Then a date blinked on screen. November 12, 1997. The camera view shifted to a room, bare, padded, empty except for a single cot. A man sat on it. Evelyn's body locked up. Marcus muttered, "Holy, Evelyn. That's him." To us. The same face. The same unnatural stillness. The same blank expression. Impossible. He hadn't changed. Not aged. Not deteriorated. The man on the tape lifted his eyes and stared directly into the camera, as though he knew someone was watching years later. Evelyn whispered, "Ugh. This can't be real." Dalton crossed his arms, voice tight. "You recognize him now?" She shook her head. "I've never met him. I wasn't assigned to room 19 patients. I only handled post-evaluation reports. I never saw any of them in person. The ward was shut down before I finished my residency." Marcus pointed at the timestamp. "Then explain this." On screen, the man opened his mouth slowly. He spoke a single sentence. "She's coming." Dalton frowned. "Who?" The man on the tape answered as if hearing Dalton through time. "Evelyn." Silence filled the room like smoke. Evelyn felt her pulse in her ears. This must be edited. A hoax. Someone tampered. Dalton shook his head. These tapes were locked in evidence storage for 2 decades. Nobody had access. Marcus rewound the footage, slowed it down frame by frame. And that's when they saw it. In the window reflection. Another figure. Standing behind the cameraman. Still featureless. Evelyn's throat tightened. The same silhouette from the cliffs. Marcus hit pause. "There were 2 of them?" Dalton whispered, "Maybe more." The patient files. They reviewed tape after tape, but most were static, short clips of the man sitting or staring or pacing. Until one showed something different. December 3, 1997. The patient was strapped to the cot, arms, legs, chest. Staff voices echoed. No response to stimuli. Rapid dissociation episodes. Behavioral mimicry is increasing. The camera zoomed in on the patient's face. His features flickered. Like the act of holding a human expression was taxing. Evelyn gripped the table. "He's not mimicking symptoms. He's mimicking people." Marcus blinked. "Like a psychological echo? Like a blank slate copying whatever it sees," she whispered. On the tape, the patient suddenly snapped his head upward and smiled. Not with emotion, but with precision, too symmetrical, too controlled. Then he looked into the camera and spoke with a voice that wasn't his. A perfect imitation of a woman. A woman Evelyn recognized. Her mother. "You shouldn't have left us, Evelyn," the patient said with her mother's voice, tone flawless. "You were supposed to come back." Marcus whispered, "What the hell?" Evelyn's eyes filled with shock. "That's impossible." Dalton leaned closer. "How did he know your mother?" "He didn't," she said. No patient could have known that tone, the way she spoke. "That's personal. Private. He's imitating someone he's never seen." Marcus swallowed. "So he can mimic anything?" "Not mimic," Evelyn corrected. "Inhabit." The seal order. Tape after tape revealed more disturbing behavior. Voices shifting, mannerisms copying random staff members, even replicating voices of people who'd never entered the ward. Finally, Dalton inserted a tape marked with bold red ink. "Sealed. Do not view." The footage began in chaos. Alarms blaring, lights flickering. Orderlies ran past the camera. A panicked voice yelled, "Room 19 breach. Lock it down." The camera spun wildly and caught sight of the patient, walking calmly through the hall. Every door he passed, unlocked on its own. Marcus whispered, "He wasn't escaping. He was exploring." On the footage, he paused, turned toward the camera, and said, "She will finish what they began." Evelyn felt ice crawl down her spine. "Who is she?" Dalton looked at her. Marcus looked at her. They didn't need to say it. The patient had been referring to Evelyn long before she ever came to Blackthorn. The final tape. The last tape Dalton played stunned all three of them into silence. There was no date, just a black screen. Then a whisper, distorted and layered. "Evelyn." Static. "You opened the door." "What door?" she whispered. Static again. Then the clearest sentence yet. "Room 19 was never meant to contain us." Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. Plural. There were others. The storm outside howled as if responding to the tape's final words. "We are already here." And then the tape cut out. The phone call. Before anyone could speak, Dalton's desk phone rang, shrill, jarring. He picked it up. "Sheriff Dalton." He froze. Then his eyes widened. He covered the receiver. "It's the Coast Guard unit posted near Hawthorne Point." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "They found him." Dalton listened for several seconds, ashen. Then he hung up slowly. "What happened?" Marcus asked. Dalton swallowed hard. "They didn't find a body." Evelyn exhaled unsteadily. "We expected that." Dalton shook his head. "They found footprints." Evelyn straightened. "Footprints where?" Dalton looked at her with dread. "At the bottom of the cliff. Walking away. Long strides. No hesitation. As if the fall didn't hurt him." Marcus whispered, "Where do the tracks go?" Dalton hesitated. "Toward town." A beat of horrible silence. Evelyn's voice trembled. "Which part of town?" Dalton answered, barely above a whisper. "Your neighborhood." Evelyn had been afraid before. Afraid for Patience, afraid for her reputation, afraid for the truth she hadn't dared dig up. But she had never felt terror like this. The man from the cliffs, Patient Zero, or whatever he truly was, had walked away from a fall that should have shattered every bone in his body. And now he was heading toward her neighborhood. Evelyn's hands shook as she stood in Sheriff Dalton's conference room, the storm still rattling the windows. Marcus paced back and forth, trying, and failing, to mask his fear. Dalton gathered his gear with quick, sharp movements, like a man who knew the clock was running out. "He can't disappear again," Dalton muttered. "If he's headed into town, people are in danger. We move now." Marcus turned to Evelyn. "You're not going home alone. We go together." She barely heard them. Her thoughts were stuck on the tapes, that impossible face staring into the camera decades ago, whispering her name long before she was even assigned to Blackthorn Ward. It felt like fate, but not the poetic kind. More like a trap laid years before she knew it existed. Dalton grabbed his radio. "I'll call in deputies to sweep the area around Evelyn's place." "Marcus, get your car." "Evelyn." But Evelyn was already putting on her coat. "I know what he wants," she said suddenly. Marcus stopped. "What?" "He's not looking for my house," she said. "He's looking for me." Dalton exchanged a grim look with Marcus. "Then we make sure he finds you," Dalton said. "On our terms." The drive into the dark. The storm had eased, but the town felt suffocated by fog rolling in thick from the coast. Streetlights glowed like dying embers, and the wet pavement reflected them in yellow streaks stretching into the distance. Marcus drove while Dalton followed behind in his cruiser. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, fingers pressed together tightly, staring ahead with hollow eyes. Marcus spoke gently. "Talk to me." But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until the pieces stopped spinning like poison glass. "Evelyn," Marcus said again, voice firmer. "You're shutting down. I need you with me." She swallowed. "Marcus?" I felt him watching me days before we saw him on the cliffs. Marcus stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I'd wake up at night and feel someone standing outside my window. But when I checked, no one was there." She took a shaky breath. "But now I think he was there. He just didn't want me to see him yet." Marcus bit his lip. "Why you? Why does he know your name? Plus, all of this?" "I don't know," Evelyn whispered. "But he's been waiting for me for a long time." Lightning flashed above, illuminating thick fog that curled like smoke between trees. Marcus gripped the wheel tighter. "Then tonight we get answers." The empty house. They reached Evelyn's neighborhood in under 15 minutes. Dalton's cruiser pulled up behind them. Deputies canvassed the nearby streets, flashlights carving through fog. Evelyn stepped out of the car. Her house sat in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Small, modest, dark. Too dark. Dalton approached her. "You left lights on when you went to the cliffs?" Evelyn nodded. "Just the hallway light and the kitchen lamp." Dalton's jaw tightened. "Marcus, with me." "Evelyn, stay behind us." But she followed anyway. Every instinct screamed that patient zero, or whatever he was, had been inside. And possibly still was. They approached cautiously. Dalton tried the door. It creaked open. Unlocked. Marcus cursed under his breath. He was here. Dalton raised his gun, stepped in. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Evelyn followed, her own heartbeat louder than the storm outside. She scanned the kitchen, then the living room. Nothing disturbed. Nothing broken. But something felt rearranged. Like an invisible hand had brushed over the air, altering the atmosphere just enough to unsettle her bones. Dalton checked the back door. Locked. No forced entry. Marcus crouched near the hallway. "Evelyn, look." A footprint. But what? Leading down the hallway toward her bedroom. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Dalton motioned silently, "Stay behind us." They followed the faint, damp prints. Foot by foot. Step by step. The prints ended in front of Evelyn's bedroom door. Dalton exhaled. "Ready?" Marcus nodded. Dalton pushed the door open fast, gun raised, and froze. Evelyn leaned forward, breath shaking. Her bed was disturbed, sheets folded back. And on the pillow lay a tape recorder. 1990s era model. Beside it, a small piece of paper. Evelyn's shaking hand reached for it. On the paper, written in cold, uniform handwriting. "Press play." Marcus whispered, "Don't touch that." But Evelyn already had. Her fingers hovered over the play button. Dalton stepped forward. "Evelyn, wait." She pressed it. A hiss of static filled the room. Then a voice emerged. Not quite human, not quite mechanical, something that scraped across the boundary between memory and imitation. "Hello, Evelyn." Marcus grabbed her arm. "God, it's him." The voice continued. "You didn't recognize me at Hawthorne Point." Evelyn's hand trembled. "You knew me before the ward, before the trial, before the doctors gave up the key and locked us in the dark." Locked us? Plural again. The voice shifted, just slightly, becoming deeper, then higher, then layered, as though many voices were speaking through one throat. "But you were a child then. You wouldn't remember." Evelyn's breath caught. "A child, what does he?" The tape continued. "We missed you." The room seemed to shrink around her. Marcus whispered, "Evelyn, did your family ever?" She shook her head helplessly. "I don't know. I don't know." The tape crackled, then played the man's voice once more, this time soft, almost fond. "Come home." A click. Silence. Evelyn stared at the recorder, unable to breathe. Her mind went blank, then flooded with questions she had no answers for. Marcus knelt beside her. "Come home." "Home where?" Dalton stood rigid, fists clenched. "He's leading you somewhere. It's a trap." Evelyn forced her voice out. "Or it's the only way to understand who he is." Marcus shook his head. "We don't follow breadcrumbs from a thing that walked out of a cliff fall and broke into your house like a ghost." Evelyn looked at both of them. "He said I knew him as a child." Marcus paused. "Do you?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But I need to." Dalton checked the tape recorder. No fingerprints. No smudges. "It's dry, he didn't leave it wet from the storm." Marcus exhaled. "Meaning, he put it here before the cliffs." Evelyn felt her skin go cold. He had been inside her home long before tonight. The map. Dalton opened the recorder's battery compartment. Maybe there's something else. Inside was a folded piece of old paper. Dalton unfolded it carefully on the bed. A map. Hand-drawn. Yellowed with age. Evelyn's throat tightened. Marcus leaned over. "What is that?" Evelyn recognized it instantly. "It's the grounds of Blackthorn Ward." Dalton's eyes widened. Before it was demolished. And on the map, a circled location far behind the main building, past the administration wing. A structure Evelyn had never seen on any official diagram. A structure labeled in faint pencil. Unit 0. Sublevel entrance. Marcus whispered, 0, patient 0? Evelyn stared at the map like it was a doorway to another lifetime. Dalton straightened. He wants you to go there. Marcus shook his head violently. It's an abandoned psychiatric unit underground. A hidden one. Not on record. Probably unstable. We're not stepping foot in that place. Evelyn folded the map slowly. I'm going. Marcus grabbed her arm. Evelyn, though, this isn't bravery. This is suicide. But she met his eyes. For 20 years, everyone thought the horrors of Blackthorn Ward ended when they shut it down. She held up the map. But something kept living under it. Dalton exhaled. If we go together. Full gear. Back up on standby. Evelyn nodded. But the truth was forming in her mind like a shadow growing teeth. Whatever patient 0 was, he wasn't the only one kept in that underground unit. And if she didn't go now, the past was going to come clawing out on its own. The night falls quiet. The fog thickened outside, swallowing the neighborhood as deputies packed up and patrols moved outward. Dalton radioed headquarters. Marcus checked his weapon. Evelyn packed nothing, because she sensed no possession she owned could protect her from what waited underground. But as they left the house, Evelyn paused on the porch, because for the briefest moment, she felt someone stand behind her, breathing, waiting. She turned quickly. Nothing there. But the air felt colder, and she could have sworn she heard a whisper fade into the fog. Welcome back. The road to the ruins of Blackthorn Ward was silent as a grave. Marcus drove with both hands gripping the wheel, eyes locked forward, the muscles in his jaw tight enough to crack teeth. Dalton followed behind in his cruiser, its headlights slicing through the fog. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat once again, her heartbeat louder than the engine. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't afraid of what waited beneath the earth. She was afraid of the part of herself that felt drawn to it. The map sat folded in her lap, but she had memorized every line, every corridor, every penciled note far more quickly than she should have been able to. As if her memory wasn't recalling it, but recognizing it. Marcus stole a glance at her. You're too quiet. Evelyn didn't respond. Couldn't, because the closer they got, the heavier the air felt. Not physically, emotionally, like the past was condensing around them, thick and suffocating. Like the ground itself remembered what was buried under it. Dalton's voice crackled through Marcus's radio. Half a mile out. Stay sharp. Marcus answered with a nod he couldn't see. Copy. Evelyn finally forced herself to speak. Marcus, if things go wrong. No. His voice was firm. We're walking out of there. All three of us. Evelyn almost smiled. You don't know what we're dealing with. I don't need to. He reached out, squeezing her hand. Because you're not alone. Her heart stuttered. Then the ruins came into view. The remains of Blackthorn. The old asylum grounds were fenced off, rusted metal sagging, the condemned, signs torn and colorless. The main building had long since collapsed. Twisted beams rose like ribs from a decaying corpse. Trees and vines had swallowed most of it, reclaiming what humanity had once tried to bury. Dalton parked behind them and stepped out, shotgun slung over his back. Deputies waited further down the road on standby. Gear up, Dalton said. We go in fast, stay together, and we do not split up. Marcus checked his flashlight, holster, and backup batteries. Evelyn stood still for a long moment, staring at the overgrown skeleton of the asylum. A whisper brushed her ear. Welcome home. She jolted, but the men didn't react. Her breath trembled. She wasn't imagining it. Something was calling to her. The entrance to Unit 0. They followed the map around the collapsed main structure, stepping over broken bricks and charred wood until they reached the far rear of the property. A mound of earth. A rusted hatch barely visible under vines. A forgotten entrance. Marcus knelt, brushing away debris. This is it. Dalton nodded. On 3. It took both men straining with all their strength before the hatch cracked open with a groan like something waking from a long sleep. A breath of freezing air rushed up. Evelyn's skin prickled. This cold wasn't natural. Dalton shone his light downward. A metal ladder dropped into an unlit corridor, walls lined with old pipes, concrete cracked by age. Evelyn whispered, "It's exactly like the map." Marcus exhaled. "Then we stick to it. Don't get turned around." Dalton went first, then Evelyn, then Marcus. As soon as they descended, the hatch slammed shut behind them. Marcus cursed, flashlight sweeping upward. Probably. But there was no wind down here. Evelyn swallowed. She didn't tell him the truth she felt in her bones. The ward had closed the door on them. The halls of the forgotten. The underground corridor stretched long and narrow, the air stale and heavy. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if the sound wasn't traveling forward but being swallowed into the walls. Dalton checked his map. Straight ahead until we reached the junction. Then right. They walked slowly, lights cutting through darkness that felt too thick, too alive. The walls were marked. Names scratched in. Numbers. Symbols. Claw marks. Marcus shivered. What the hell happened down here? Evelyn ran her fingers lightly over the markings. She didn't remember them, but her body did. Her hand hesitated over a symbol drawn over and over. Infinity. The infinity loop. No beginning, Evelyn murmured. No end. Marcus frowned. What? This symbol was on patient Zero's hand, she whispered. And in the storm outside my house. And on the cliffs. Dalton raised his gun. Meaning someone's come down here recently. Evelyn didn't correct him. She wasn't sure the symbols were recent. They might have been waiting for her. The door. They turned right at the junction, following the map deeper into the underground facility. Pipes dripped from overhead, and the sound echoed like distant footsteps. At the end of the hall stood a thick metal door with peeling white paint. The faded text on the front. Unit 0, authorized person only. Evelyn's breath caught. Marcus stepped forward. You okay? No, she whispered. But I need to be. Dalton tested the door handle. It opened as if expecting them. Inside was darkness deeper than any they had passed. They stepped in together. Marcus shut the door behind them. As he did, light flickered on overhead. Old bulbs humming to life. One by one, down the length of a long, sterile hallway. Dalton muttered, "Power shouldn't be working." Evelyn whispered, "Someone restored it." But she knew that wasn't true. The ward itself had awakened. The room at the end. They walked cautiously down the hall. Empty rooms lined the corridor, observation rooms, therapy cells, storage closets, all stripped bare. But each one had deep grooves etched into the floor as if something had been dragged violently in or out. Then they reached the last door. The label, Room 0A. Evelyn's hand rose toward the handle. Marcus grabbed her wrist. "We don't know what's in there." Dalton steadied his weapon. "On your call, Evelyn." She exhaled and opened the door. The room was small. A bed, a chair, a metal four-stand, a scribbled infinity symbol covering the far wall. On the bed, Evelyn froze. Marcus whispered, "Dear God?" A body lay still, covered in a white sheet. Dalton approached, jaw tight. He said he died years ago. But that fall on the cliffs, those injuries, maybe he didn't survive that one. He gripped the sheet. Looked at Evelyn. "You ready?" She nodded. Dalton pulled the sheet back. Evelyn gasped. Marcus staggered. Dalton swore. It was patient Zero. But not the one who walked the cliffs. This one was decayed, dead for decades. Skeletal. Face sunken. Hand outstretched toward the wall, infinity symbol carved into bone. Marcus whispered, "Then who the hell is the man out there?" Evelyn stepped closer. Her voice trembled. "Not who. What? The voice. The plural. We missed you." The realization hit like ice water. Unit 0 wasn't a ward, she whispered. It was an experiment. Dalton turned to her. "Explain." Patient 0 wasn't a person. He was the first host. Her breath shook. Whatever lived inside him moved on. Marcus whispered, "Into who?" A voice answered from behind them. "Evelyn." They turned. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, unmoving, eyes reflecting the overhead light like glass. The man from the cliffs. Marcus raised his gun instantly. "Don't move." But the figure didn't react. He looked only at Evelyn. Dalton positioned himself between them. "Say one more word and I put you down." The man blinked slowly, then spoke in a voice layered with echoes. "You came home." Evelyn stepped back. "Why me?" The man tilted his head. "You were the only survivor." Marcus froze. Survivor of what? Evelyn felt the memory before she understood it. A hallway. Crying babies. Doors slamming. A nurse shouting. Her mother's voice screaming her name. Her knees nearly buckled. Dalton grabbed her. "Evelyn, stay with us." The man continued, voice soft. "You were born here. In Unit 0. The others died when the trial failed." His eyes reflected the infinity symbol behind her. "You were the only vessel we couldn't fill." Marcus fired a warning shot. "Back away from her." But the man didn't flinch. He stepped forward. Dalton and Marcus raised their guns. The lights went out. Darkness. Evelyn heard the struggle. The guns firing. Marcus shouting. Dalton yelling her name. Hands grabbing her. Pulling. She screamed. "Marcus!" He shouted back, voice strained. "I've got you. Don't let go." Then the lights flickered back. The man was inches from her face. Eyes empty. Skin wrong. Mouth opening too wide. "You belong with us." Evelyn's survival instinct snapped. She grabbed the map from her pocket and shoved it at him. "No." The man recoiled violently, screaming in a chorus of voices. The map, the original diagram of the experiment, burned in her hand. Dalton fired. Marcus tackled her to the floor. The man staggered back, body convulsing, cracking, collapsing into itself, then fell still. Silence. A whisper from the walls. "We are still here." The infinity symbol carved into the wall began to glow faintly. Marcus yelled, "We have to go now." Evelyn scrambled to her feet. Dalton grabbed her shoulder. "Move." They ran. The lights burst overhead. Doors slammed behind them. The corridor shook like something alive and furious. Whispers grew louder, chasing them. "You were the last one. You survived. We want you back." They reached the ladder. Marcus climbed first, pulling Evelyn up behind him. Dalton came last, firing down into the darkness as voices screamed below them. They burst out of the hatch into the storm. Dalton slammed it shut. Marcus threw his weight on top. Evelyn collapsed on the ground, shaking. The whispers faded. Silence. For now. Aftermath. Authorities sealed the asylum grounds permanently. Dalton requested federal involvement. Marcus filed a report that he knew no one would ever believe. They destroyed Unit 0. Every document, every tape, every map. Except one thing remained unanswered. What exactly happened the night Evelyn was born? And who else might remember it? 1 month later, Evelyn sat in her small, new apartment, sunlight finally warming her face through open curtains. She tried to read, tried to breathe, tried to pretend life was normal again. A knock sounded at the door. Her chest tightened. But when she opened it, Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets. "I thought you might want company," he said softly. She smiled, tears stinging her eyes. "Yeah, I do." He stepped inside. Peace, fragile but real, settled over her. For the first time since the cliffs, she felt human again. Her phone buzzed. A message. A known number. No text. Just a photo. Evelyn's heart jolted. It was a picture of her, sleeping in her new bed, and on the wall beside her head, drawn in something dark and fresh. Marcus looked over her shoulder. "Oh God," Evelyn whispered, "they're not done."